Welcome back to action inside the TCA covered arena as we get set for the next discipline to go. And we've taken out the jumps and we're going to be focusing next on dressage. And our first rider that we'll tell you about in a moment is Dynamite Warrior, ridden by Holly Zekin from Metamora, Michigan. And from the tone, there is 60 seconds until going in the arena. We welcome you back to coverage of the 2018 TCA Thoroughbred Makeover presented by Retired Racehorse Project, and we're into the dressage discipline. And the first horse that we see in the arena is Dynamite Warrior, who, if you were following earlier, we saw in Field Hunters. So a dual finalist. There are a few of these horses in the Thoroughbred Makeover. Dynamite Warrior is ridden by Holly Zekin from Metamora, Michigan. The horse is owned by Lieutenant Colonel Jan Rubin, a United States Air Force pilot. Goes by the code name Chester, and we want to say hello to him and his troops that are watching in Selfridge, Michigan. Holly is a very experienced rider at the highest levels of eventing, competing as high as the 3-star CIC level. And this horse, Dynamite Warrior, what we saw in Field Hunters, was a very nice mover, and bringing in Ashley Gubich onto the broadcast for the makeover finale to tell us a little bit about what we're seeing with this 5-year-old chestnut gelding.
This horse really has, horse and rider really have a nice connection. If you can see just his head carriage, he has a really light mouth, and her hands are really working really nicely to communicate with this horse, and you can see how steady he is, and they're really working together to get a nice connection here.
That's a nice stretch down through the walk across the diagonal.
It's one of the tougher movements in the dressage test, especially for these green horses who are used to being very tight and upright. A lot of times a lower score for a horse is going to be that free walk, and the judges may ask for a little bit more stretch. He kind of went down, but there wasn't a lot of throughness in his back. Really nicely done though, and he looked relaxed, and I think he'll get pretty good scores on that, especially for being a green off-the-track thoroughbred.
And stretching through the trot as well, a real relaxed test here for Holly Zekin. And that is the time for Holly Zekin and Dynamite Warrior. the first to go in dressage, sponsored by Omega Alpha. And we want to say hello to the horse's owner, who is Lieutenant Colonel Jan Rubin from the United States Air Force, a pilot based in Selfridge, Michigan, who is following on the live stream here at the Thoroughbred Makeover on USCF Network. The next horse to enter the arena is Velourdo, who is from Marietta, Georgia, with Taylor Blumenthal, and they did freestyle yesterday, dressage today. Horse who is a 5-year-old bay gelding, bred here in Kentucky and raced exclusively in Florida, now back to Kentucky with Taylor Blumenthal, whose first horse ever was an off-the-track thoroughbred, and says, I have always loved my thoroughbreds, and competes on multiple off-the-track thoroughbreds in eventing as well. So we just saw Dynamite Warrior, who we saw earlier in Field Hunters and now in dressage, so a dual finalist. This dressage competition is sponsored by Omega Alpha, and our judges who are judging from inside the club lounge, Susan Posner and Karen Wynn.
When you're ready. Ready to go. Down the count.
And horse and rider have 60 seconds from the tone to enter for their 4-minute finale test.
And this pair is absolutely gorgeous when we talk about horses that look the part and are put together nicely. This horse is so beautifully turned out. Beautiful shiny coat. His condition is awesome, and they really look great together.
That was the first thing I noticed, is just how well this horse has turned out. A beautiful looking thoroughbred, the way the male has brushed out the coat on this horse. This year, the dressage for the eventing and for the dressage took place in the Rolex Stadium, so quite a venue, one of the most storied venues in the country to be hosting the 2018 Thoroughbred Makeover.
And these horses definitely have a big challenge, having already competed in the Rolex, which can be overwhelming even for well-schooled, experienced horses, and then going from that into the covered arena. These are very, very different environments for these horses to have to be able to adjust and hold their cool and relax through. You're not going to get quality of gaits if your horse cannot relax over his back. We see this horse is doing really well under the conditions, but just a little bit more tension than we saw in that last one.
Yeah, we saw in Dynamite Warrior that nice extension, and this horse stride a little bit shorter and seems to be processing the situation he's in and trying to pick up the canter there. And good job, though, by Taylor Blumenthal, who's such a professional, now to try and get a bit of a rhythm going for this horse.
And really, you can see moments of a nice uphill canter, and there's tons of potential there. I think with some more experience on this horse, he's really going to be a stellar dressage horse.
All of these horses could not have been retrained before December 1st of last year, and at that time, Velourdo was still on the racetrack, finished up a 25-race career in December 2017 at Gulfstream Park in Florida. A horse who was purchased as a 2-year-old for $30,000 and found moderate success on the track, earning $45,000.
Looks like she's allowing him to move forward a little bit more, and we're getting a little bit more opening at the shoulder. Again, showing you the potential this horse has for the future.
Yeah, a few moments ago, the horse let out a few deep breaths, and that's often a sign that the horses are going to take in all of the craziness and be able to let out any of the stress that they've had.
Definitely well handled by the rider. She's showing great composure and keeping her cool, and it looks like her horse is really feeding off and doing the best he can to take on that energy as well.
Comes down from the canter to the trot as they reach the final 15 seconds of their test. We'll trot across the diagonal.
Opened up a little bit there. I like to see that. I'd like to see a horse that gets better throughout the test.
And let's hear it for the test for Taylor Blumenthal and Velourdo. A great weekend for them in freestyle and making the finals of dressage. For our next horse, we want to ask the crowd. The rider, Sarah Hepler, has asked the crowd to hold off on any applause until the end of the competition. And yesterday, Sarah Hepler performed in freestyle in a beautiful and inspiring routine. And if you were here, it was hard to keep a dry eye in the room with how inspiring Sarah's performance was, showcasing flat lever in a para dressage test and inspiring messages that were on her shirt, a real great cause that she's promoting here about women, helping women, and encouraging, and how riding has become a big part of that. And so all the way from Rochester, New York, is Sarah Hepler, and flat lever New York bred, who is eligible to receive one of the state awards, as New York is one of the states that has really gotten behind the horses at the Thoroughbred Makeover. And this horse, sired by Flatters, become a very good sire of sport horses with multiple entrants, 4 entrants in this year's Thoroughbred Makeover. Again, a reminder, please hold off on the applause until the end of the test for Sarah Hepler and flat lever, and with the whistle, they'll have 60 seconds to enter the arena. Yesterday, Ashley, as we bring it back to the live stream here on USCF Network and on the Retired Racehorse Project website and social media, this was such an inspiring pair to watch. And Sarah told the story about how she lost her arm at 10 years old, had been riding for a couple of years, and so riding was already a big part of her life. And then at 10 years old, lost her arm, went back to the barn where she was riding, and they said something that would be devastating to hear, and the way she tells the stories, that they said, well, we don't have a handicapped riding program, and it was something that stood with her for a number of years, but recently, based out of Rochester, has felt comfortable performing a pair dressage test, and this pair has been phenomenal to watch. And it was such an inspiring performance yesterday, especially in freestyle, able to bring in that message and to share about being encouraging and women helping women, and this pair now has made it to the finals in dressage, and a really nice moving horse.
I absolutely loved their routine yesterday, and you know, this horse is absolutely beautiful. It's not the biggest and flashiest mover you'll see out there, but so consistent and so smooth, and seeing that connection that they have was really impressive. I think it took a lot of people's breath away yesterday watching these guys go.
I love how this horse stretches down, and Sarah rides with such a strong seat. It's like she's glued into the saddle and using the core and the legs, and if you're watching, this is a great foundational lesson on how to ride, and to take a horse sired by Flatter, who's become a very good sire of sport horses, and be able to prepare him for the Thoroughbred Makeover in less than a year of retraining. This horse ran 38 times, won 8 races, made almost $120,000 as a veteran claimer in Ohio and New York. And he's got a bright future in front of him as a 7-year-old, really nice dressage prospect.
Yeah, I really expect to see this horse go some places, just to show his brain and his willingness, and obviously the great training that he's had. Again, this is a big environment for these horses. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of sights and a lot of sounds, and they're handling it very well.
Sarah is riding the horse well. You saw the horse swishing the tail, throwing his head about a little bit, but has gotten the horse back in sync with her. And he's got his mouth moving on the bit. He really seems happy with what he's being asked to do. This is a really nice serpentine.
And it's great to see that connection. A lot of riders, when they're learning dressage, or really any discipline that should start with dressage, they're looking for that connection. And you get that through your seat and your leg. And this shows she has such a nice light hand and does really, really well communicating with him.
Sarah's shaking her head. We all want to applaud. We've been inspired by this performance, but let's hold off until horse and rider exit the arena. Sarah doing a great job of handling the horse, especially in these situations. The horse who finished up racing last November after a 38-race career, made almost $120,000, is eligible for the special New York Bred Award, which will be given to the highest place New York bred at this year's Thoroughbred Makeover. So after Flat Lever, next we have in the arena the horse who comes in second place in what has been a fairly close competition in dressage, and this is Sacred Promise and Sky Liikanen, who's from nearby in Midway, Kentucky, by way of Australia, and has been recognized at some of the top shows in the United States and in Australia, and now working with Dan James at Double Dan Horsemanship. And this horse second in dressage after the prelims, and is first in freestyle, and so we will see them later on this afternoon with a very entertaining freestyle routine. And now to see the foundational work with dressage here. Sacred Promise, a young 5-year-old gray gelding who was bred in Kentucky at the famed Windstar Farm, And that's the same breeding operation as Triple Crown winner Justifying Windstar has a booth here inside the TCA covered arena.
Okay, we're ready up here.
If you're following along, be sure to stick around to see this horse in freestyle put together a routine that was minion themed. And from that routine, it suggested that this horse would handle anything thrown at him. And so I think this is a horse who's already been inside the covered arena who will handle the environment well. Sky was selected onto the Queensland Young Rider squad 10 years ago and has been performing well in Australia and in the United States, and now at shows does trick riding and is training under Dan James with Double Dan horsemanship. A real quiet horse, it seems like, so far, Ashley.
Yeah, super steady and just consistent. He's had the same rhythm the whole way around, nice and balanced. Again, a light connection. You can see his mouth is loose and taking that bit. There's an opportunity. Could open up a little bit more. It looks like this horse is relaxed and willing and could move forward. Somebody showing a nice quality of gait, especially for a 5-year-old, you know, with just a handful of months training. And we saw in the freestyle, they definitely put this horse through his paces and make sure he's been desensitized. So this is one that I would think is not going to be phased by this environment. Our first really nice stretch down that we've seen from our competitors. There, you see he stretches down. It'd be nice if he stretched like that and held through, but he's not really getting super tense, so I like to see that.
Sky keeping a nice steady contact through this serpentine. Good down transition to the walk, and hopefully we can continue showing that stretch through the walk.
You can see he is much more free through the shoulder, and you get a bigger stride and more freedom in that movement. Because there's not any extra tension there.
When the horse is opening and closing the mouth like that, what does that signify?
It can mean a number of different things. Generally, you want a quiet mouth, but if they're relaxed and moving there, it could just be adjusting the bit. It shows a little bit of nerves there, and you see how his head's cocked in. She's doing well to balance that out, but he's holding just the slightest bit of tension in there. Not pulling too much, though, which is good to see.
We saw a dressage winner at the Thoroughbred Makeover in 2016 be named America's Most Wanted Thoroughbred. And back in 2016, that was Lauren Turner and Fairway King.
Yeah, he built up just a little bit on that canter depart, got a little tense in the corner, so popped up a little bit in the canter, but balanced out pretty well once he got moving.
They'll be wrapping up their test momentarily. We'll get the word from the judges.
Okay, that is her time.
And let's hear it for Sky Leekinen and Sacred Promise. And as relaxing as it is to watch that test, you'll want to stick around for freestyle when they'll have a high energy performance as part of that, having made the finals in both dressage and freestyle. 10 years ago, Sky Liikanen was on the Queensland Young Rider squad and now coming to the United States and working locally with a fellow countryman at Double Dan Horsemanship and Dan James, and making it here to the Thoroughbred Makeover and making the finals in both of the disciplines in which she has entered. Sacred Promise, who's a horse for sale in the ASPCA Makeover Marketplace. Last horse and rider combination to go for dressage will be the current leader heading into the finals, and that is Wild Lil Kitten, who is ridden by Ann Zaharias from Chattanooga, Tennessee, a United States Dressage Federation bronze and silver medalist on self-trained horses, has competed through Intermediate 1, and currently a participant in the USDFL Judges Program. Wild Lil Kitten was a $70,000 purchase as a yearling, and then sold for $7,000 as a 2-year-old. Not much success on the track, but now finding it here in the dressage arena. There are a few sires that are really well represented at this year's Thoroughbred Makeover, suggesting that they're not just great racehorse sires, but great sport horse sires as well. And one of them is Kitten's Joy, the sire of Wild Lil Kitten. And Kitten's Joy represented by 6 horses at this year's Thoroughbred Makeover. So Wild Lil Kitten, as a yearling, was valued at $70,000 for his breeding, but didn't really have it for racing. Just 1 second-place finish in 8 lifetime starts that came at Tampa Bay Downs. Retired in August of last year and now training with Ann Zaharias.
Now I really like the raw potential of this horse. You see, he's a bit flashier mover than the others, and it's clear to see why he's up in the top standings here. He seems a little more affected about being in this environment. I can only imagine how his test looked outside in the Rolex arena. He might have been a bit more composed, but this has some truly nice, just natural movement, and shows he's going to really be an awesome horse once he gets consistent. Some of the other horses in this final, oh, and there's a really nice, this is the first really nice extension I've seen. He's got a lot of good movement in there. I think some of the other horses in this final made it because they were just amazingly consistent and nice and steady and rhythmic through everything. This one looks a little bit more challenging, but I think when he pulls it all together, really, really a nice horse.
And giving Wild Lil Kitten a little pat on the neck to encourage the horse and keep him going. Calm him down, and now coming down to the walk. And this is a tough environment for these horses to compete in.
Yeah, he's definitely a little amped today, but that's not something that's unheard of here in this environment.
The experience will serve them well in the long run. Going back to that trot across the diagonal, that was really nice extension. There's a good pickup of the canter.
I know it's tough with these forward horses. I think if he had a little bit more freedom to move, he could have had a steadier depart there, but he's a lot of horse today, and she's doing a good job of holding him together.
Now, this is a routine that each of the riders can plan themselves. And so it's not a prescribed dressage routine. Is there a time when you may see how your horse is doing and decide to vary things up in the middle, or is this a routine you think they've been rehearsing and stick to because they've been doing it so often?
Generally, you have an idea of what you're going in there to do, and also it's not a lot of training practices don't like schooling the same test over and over and over again, because you can get a smart horse like I bet this one is, who will start predicting what's going to happen and learning their test. So they've probably done a lot of these pieces, and she has something memorized. I said earlier with one of the other disciplines that there's a lot of improvisation. No matter how much you prepare, there's a lot of different factors, and some of those are temperament, the motions of your horse, tenseness, the environment, and you need to make adjustments to present the best to your horse.
And that is Wild Lil Kitten and Ann Zaharias from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Dressage was the most popular discipline entered at this year's Thoroughbred Makeover. 182 entries at the time of closing. And that represented the biggest of the 10 disciplines for the Thoroughbred Makeover this year, which received a record number of entries. There were 794 trainers accepted when applications went out, a 37% increase from last year, and in the end, 478 horses make it to the Kentucky Horse Park this weekend, a huge growth from the 185 in 2015 and the 385 last year. And now we can announce the awards for dressage presented by Omega Alpha. And first we'll recognize the Best Turned Out Award, sponsored by Nina Bonney. To win a halter from Clever with Leather is bridle number 160, Jacqueline Schwartz and Scootin Newton. Also recognizing the top junior rider with $500 from Horseware, and that is bridle number 378, Sophia Rodriguez and Kyanite. Our top amateur is in the top 10, and that we'll get to in a moment. And we start first with number 10. And in 10th place, bridle number 213, American Dynamic and Lisa Streckfuss. 9th place was bridle number 295, Dynamite Answers and Allison Willoughby. 8th place, number 558, You Got It and Heidi Jones. In 7th, and the top amateur, number 358, Shannon Reed on Jake's Mineshaft. 6th went to number 307, Fire and Frost, ridden by Troy Wing. And now for the top 5 from the performances this afternoon. In 5th place, number 193, Velourdo and Taylor Blumenthal. 4th place went to number 296, Dynamite Warrior and Holly Zekin. In 3rd, rider number 309, Flat Lever and Sarah Hepler. Second place went to number 550, Wild Lil Kitten and Ann Zaharias. The winner of dressage at the 2018 Thoroughbred Makeover is number 158, Sacred Promise, and Sky Liikanen. And that pair also has a chance to be a double discipline winner. We will see them and their team of minions coming up later on in freestyle. Let's hear it for all of the dressage competitors, the most popular of the divisions at the Thoroughbred Makeover, with 182 entries out of the 478. And these were the ones that stood out among the best. Another award to present of the many states that support the Thoroughbred Makeover. The state of Delaware and Delaware Park will present a Horse Aftercare Initiative Award. It is sponsored by Cantor Delaware, Delaware Park Racing, and the Delaware Park Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association and Mid-Atlantic Rescue, awarding cash prizes to the 3 highest scoring makeover horses that raced at Delaware Park. And the highest and the winner of the Delaware Park Horse Aftercare Award is bridle number 115, Love the Beat, the 6-year-old chestnut gelding who was trained by Emily Johnson and competed in Show Jumpers, a horse who earned almost $28,000 in 28 career starts and represents the highest placing horse who raced at Delaware Park.